Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Void. We're so excited to have you today.
Episode 3.
Yes, we're making progress and pushing forward, and we're so excited. And we're happy to have you all with us as we discuss today's topic, which revolves around a leadership survey that we conducted. Some of you may have been part of it, and so we thank you for that. And if you weren't, hey, just stay tuned and you'll hear about it and all the things that we covered. But we're going to focus on the first question. And Vince, if you don't mind giving us a background of why we even ventured into a leadership survey.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Enrique. And good morning to everyone out there. Again, Vince Loran here. So we obviously both have military background, Navy and Air Force, and more than 20 plus years together, almost 50 years combined. And as we are here in Central Florida, we saw the opportunity to address what areas are kind of needed to be strengthened in the leadership arena itself, as both of us have been leaders and are leaders, right? So we want to give you the raw, give you the down and dirty of understanding the value of the leaders of what leaders need. So the survey, the instrument of the survey was great to have an assessment of a real-time value of measuring and providing feedback in specific areas of different leaders in different industries, right? Almost 40 people participated, and it focused on areas of improvement, challenges, growth opportunities, and provided several leadership expectations. So it was great. And from all that, the long term, the North Star is what we're going to do with it, which was episode 3, the podcast was 1. 2 was futuristic. When we get back into meet and greets and people, we're going to have also a leadership forum and training events. So stay tuned for those coming down the pike. Anything you would like to add about that, Enrique?
Yeah, no, you summarized it well. Our aim was to get some insight outside of our scope and our understanding of what leadership is and the voids that are in that. And I think the participation greatly helped us structure what we're going to endeavor on or embark on here in the future. The fact that we're in a condition where the facilitation of group dynamic in person is not there. We can still do it via video, and that's a blessing. And so we encourage everyone listening, and once those things start to unravel and start to be released, that you tune in and you participate, because we're truly trying to bring in health into the leadership arena. And this survey that we conducted greatly helped us out. So we'll go right into it. And question 1, which was, what advice would you give someone going into leadership position for the first time? And so, Vince, one of the things that came up resoundingly was listening, right? And so that's the first thing that we're going to focus on. And then there's some others, and we'll discuss those as we go into the question. But what do you think that listening was so important?
Woo, that's a great one, Enrique. And I'm going to drop back for a quick second before I jump into that. Was as I thought about this overarching survey and overarching goal we have, we're here to seek and strengthen your leadership capabilities. That's our goal, for you all to strengthen. And as I looked at throughout all the responses of the survey, most of them had to do with your interpersonal skills. And you'll see them come throughout the survey. But again, this is really focused on what you can do. And being a leader where you are, you already set yourself with some great skills already. So here we are trying to enhance your skills. And as Enrique mentioned, the first one is listening. And listening resoundingly came out and throughout mostly all answers of the survey. So let me give you some research. On a day, an average adult spends 70% of their time involved in some sort of communication. 70%. And I'm talking about what kind of communication aspects. You talk about speaking, listening, reading, and writing. 70% of your day. You have to sleep too, right? So out of that 70%, those four aspects come to fruition. And the most resounding one out of that is listening. 45% of us listen, 30% speaking, 16 reading, and 9 writing. So that's the breakdown of that communication. One other thought, research aspect I thought was very interesting was the fact that in communication, 85% on average of our communication is nonverbal. And it's interesting. Nonverbal communication comes into play into our communication. But here we are diving into the 45% of the whole scheme of communication, which we do 70% of the time, is listening. And there's 3 levels of listening. There's passive listening, there's active listening, and there's empathic listening. Some call it passive, the first one, as internal listening. Example, my significant other comes home from shopping and getting a couple things at Publix, and I'm looking at TV, and she comes in and tells me something that happened, and I'm like looking at the TV, and she's like, "You're not listening." So I am. I'm listening. I'm hearing you out, right? Passively listening, right? And active listening is the same example. She comes home from Publix, and I'm watching TV, and she's talking to me about what's happening, what happened to Publix. I'll turn off the TV and I'll literally focus on her. Now that's active listening. I'm really dedicating my time to understanding my client, my employee, my spouse in this manner. So you want to pay attention to that, which we talk level 1 and level 2. Now the skill set of level 3 is the holistic approach of empathic listening, when you're really paying attention to their patterns, to themselves, to everything. And I'll take it to a step further. An example, think about when you went on a first date and you really like this person. How were you listening? You're really probably right, like literally all about them. It's all about them. Nothing else matters.
Right.
That's the level of listening we want to have with every employee, every other leader, because guess what? You are understanding them, understanding what they are feeling, and you really are now teasing out all the external noise, not just external, but external to yourself. It's an art to develop, folks. It takes daily practice. As I mentioned, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, but listening, ladies and gentlemen, is very important. Think about that nonverbal. Now, I said 75%, 85%, of communication is nonverbal. Now, when you're having someone come to you and says, "Oh, Enrique, I want to talk to you for a couple minutes about XYZ." What are you doing at that time? Are you on your cell phone? Are you on the computer? Did you literally turn your chair and sit down with that individual? Because as a leader, a lot of us have a desk. So they're talking to you from across the chair of the desk and you. The desk is a barrier. If you're really listening from the heart, you're going to pull the chair next to that person, face them face to face, and really hear them out. Now that's listening for you, because non-verbally, you set yourself up to be present. And one other thing I mentioned as on a first date, if you're listening, you're leaning in. Leaning forward means a lot. You're really embarking yourself into embracing that person versus sitting back and just, I hear you. So all those facets involve listening. And that's a down and dirty, high level take on it, but it does involve a lot, Enrique.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. As you was talking, I was reminiscing of the difference in all the years of me being in leadership. And one of the things I had employed, a benefit of being a senior enlisted leader and having your own office, was that I had set in my office a little conference area. where if I had to speak to somebody or it was a group, we would go sit there. I would not sit behind my desk. I would only sit behind my desk if I had work to do. There was a secondary area that I sat in, and I'll include a picture in our show there of the areas, so that if a single person came to talk to me, I would get out from my desk and sit there, and we would be right next to each other, be able to focus, because I knew that those cues from your body, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're hiding behind something, when you have something in front of you, as you mentioned, like your cell phone, um, those things become inhibitors to communication, because our focus is truly not on the person talking to us. Uh, you were talking, and I'm thinking about all my nonverbal cues when it comes to listening. Uh, the feet, where your feet are positioned,
Mm-hmm.
because I have caught myself. And you mentioned the spouse. The spouse is the one that speaks to us the most, hopefully, uh, and and though you have to check yourself there. I've always said your true self begins at home. And if you can't do it at home, you
Mm-hmm.
definitely can't do it out there. But if you're doing it out there and not home, there's a problem, right? Uh, I'm always conscious that my feet are pointing towards my wife when she's talking to me, and I make sure that my body's not pivoted anywhere else but focusing on her while she's talking to me, because they'll be quick to tell you you're not listening, right?
Yeah.
You're seldom gonna get an employee that, or a team member that says, "You're not listening to me, are you?" Right? So, um, but if you practice those things at home, do it with your children.
Yeah.
Practice at home as a leader. Take the time, do it at home, so that when you go out into the workforce, into your teams, into your company, this is something that's natural to you and not forced. Because believe it or not, you don't have to say much to anyone for them to realize whether you're listening or not. And I think that's why it came out so resounding in the survey, is that there are so many things that we get involved with that
Mm-hmm.
become inhibitors to us listening to our teammates. And those things, if not understood, because I've seen the greatest of innovation and tactical application come from the lowest form, the lowest levels of the leadership chain. And if you're not listening actively, empathetically, because sometimes you just got to listen, just be there. Um, you
Mm-hmm.
may miss something that may be that piece that solves your issues wherever they may be. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's a no wonder it came out so often in almost all the questions, because it is one of the challenges of leadership. And it kind of funny to segue into our the next piece, which is setting the example, right? I said, try that at home. Develop it at home. No one's gonna judge you at home. So, and if it's a judgment at home, it's probably based off of love. That you're not gonna get that outside, right? So, get it done at home. Set the example. So, going into the next one, setting the example. Why is that so important as a leader?
Mm-hmm. Well, you made some great examples of setting the example right there for a second. I'm adjusting myself in my chair. Um, I think I want to just take a dive back and then hit, of course, set the example. One thing that I do as a leader, and I've done when folks came to me to talk to me about certain issues or certain challenges, I made a point to ask them, okay, if I only had 2 minutes, I had 2 minutes, and I'll let them know. If I had five or longer, what have you. But if I didn't have time, I will let them know. I said, listen, I want to be here 100% for you, but at this time I have to meet the suspense. Can we meet at, in half an hour, 30, 45 minutes? Because I want to make them know that I want to be there for them. Because if not, you're selling yourself short as a leader, trying to meet the suspense to try to please your people in a sense. So you have to set that expectation right up front. And they will honor and they will respect that for you. So that message is very important right up front. So you can practice level 3 listening versus level 1. I'm listening, but I'm not listening, right? And one other little tip for those out there was I use a lot of my hands, or sometimes I'll fidget with my pen or pencil or my phone. So what I do, I'll sit on my hand. Someone said, sit on your urges. Sit on your hands, because it helps me focus on just them. And one thing I used to also do as a little tidbit is, if they're saying something that really is like, what the heck? I can't believe you did that. I will pinch myself underneath my thigh to keep my composure. And I'm making sure I focus on that. So I don't want them, again, to the nonverbal clues, see that I'm like, what the heck you did, right, wrong, or different. I'm there to listen. And one last thing is, sometimes I'll ask, just like my spouse, I'll ask, are you wanting me to listen to give you a response, or you want me just to hear you out? And I'll ask that question because, and being a male, and I've been grown up to try to fix things. I want to fix it. Well, did you try this? Did you try that? No, if they just want me to listen and hear them out, I will not give them any my responses to try to fix things. So just certain examples of how to set the stage of listening is as important, and being in the arena with that individual. Just want to point that out. So set the example. The word that gravitates to me is integrity, right? Are you doing the right thing even when no one is looking? We see and we understand that you have to be honest and have to have those strong moral principles and moral uprightness, right? Setting the example. But that's anywhere and everywhere. Even setting the example could be just saying hello to the person who's cleaning the office, thanking them, dumping the trash out yourself, doing the small things that show the rest of the world, and especially your employees, that, wow, this person is also human. And we are, but sometimes we set ourselves in such a high bar that the perception is we're untouchable. So setting the example is basically doing the basic needs, just like everyone else, will even add more value to you as a leader. Again, taking out the trash, serving when we did that a lot in the military, we served our troops during Thanksgiving holidays, being the one serving them. It's kind of like, in a way, the support part of it, which is the next one, that servant leadership is being that example, time in and time out, 24 hours, 7 days a week. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. There's an added value for you being the same person at home that you are at work. Now, let me go back to a little story that happened to me. Senior enlisted. We in the Navy, we have a transition period where E6s become E7. We kind of mentor them through that period, and then they make it through, and then they're what we call chiefs, right? So through that period, we had a group come over to my house, and they saw the Enrique at home, right? And my wife always giggles because she always brings this up. It was during that time that one of the group members, kind of quietly brings it to the side and says, "Is he always like this here?" Mm-hmm. And she was like, "Yeah." And they said, "Wow, he's not like this out there," right? And so Some military people would kind of take pride in that, but I didn't. It
Mm,
really struck my heart
mm,
because I did not want to be two people. I wanted to be one person consistently. And I wanted to be the best person I could be consistently. And what they were not getting in the military setting was the heart. They weren't getting the heart. They were getting what they expected to get, which was a senior military leader. Um, and I and so what I did from that point on was that I would not allow myself to be anything other than what I was all the time. And if my leadership career was good up until that point, it became great. Uh, Being the example 24/7, whether you could be asleep and be an example because you still living in people's minds. And in the military, people go all over the world. And so
mhm,
they could actually be awake, working while you sleeping, thinking about what would Enrique have done? What would Senior Chief would have done, right? So these are questions that live on while you're sleeping. And that example, that setting that example is something that lives on whether you're awake or you're asleep
mhm,
because you live in people's minds. And as a leader, you have to be conscious that the example you set is the tone that people go by.
mhm.
And once you set the wrong example, you've just derailed whoever saw it, right? So it's very important to be conscious that the person that you are today is the person that everyone can say they know. And up until that point, I didn't realize it that it was two people. Um, I thought I was just the same person, but apparently I wasn't, right? So that definitely made an impact on me, and basically dictated the rest of my career, which thankfully I was blessed enough to say it was a great one. So, um, but it took humility. It took humility to get me to the point to say, man, that I can't have not one more sailor ever say that they did not get the full me every day. Um, and I talk about humility, which is the next thing that came up. It didn't surprise me either that humility would be on the list of things that came up. But what do you think that humility is so important?
Mm, okay. Well, I'm always backdropping on something
No,
you said
no, go
before
ahead, go
jumping in.
ahead.
That is important. One thing I think a good question to everyone on this podcast is to think about and ask yourself this question. Am I different at home than at work? And if you answer the question, yes, you're different, then you really have to do some introspection because to Enrique's point, you should be the same person either which way of whatever area of life you're in. So you always going to have that same foundation. You're probably just going to exercise different skill sets. So the question is, are you different and different? Are you a different person at work and at home? So think about that. And if the answer is yes, then this podcast is right for you. So I want to throw in, he asked about humility next, which, wow, you think about humility and being humble, you're not being arrogant, right? And I wrote down something here that I thought was important. I'm trying to find my glasses, but that's fine. I'll read it real quick. It says, humility generally refers to an approach to life that lacks egocentricity and actively seeks a low profile lifestyle, lacking wealth and social pretense, and most often involves service to others. I thought that summed it up really well what being humble is all about, right? It's really exercising all parts of life and not, you're shifting away from I to we. You being more curious and less confident, right? It's being humble. It involves a lot of courage too, because sometimes you have to be vulnerable. And vulnerability is not a weakness. Let's not get it mistaken. It takes a lot of courage to be vulnerable. And within that, there's humility. So folks, that's a trait that we see in leaders that say, you know what, I messed up, or give the praise to everyone out there and don't give it to you. Humble, humility. It's such a blessing of having a leader in that aspect. And you said you value their mind, and I'll also add to that, Enrique, they value your heart even more than your mind. So what are your thoughts on that?
No, you don't get too much exposure to that in the military.
Right.
And I was surprised to see in the corporate world that they don't get they get even less exposure to that. Um, and it really struck me how some bad habits, it doesn't matter what arena you're in, they're just bad. Right? And so the lack of vulnerability, and I think you're right, right? So some people don't understand the true meaning of being vulnerable. They mistake it as a weakness, and they never eat the fruit of it. And the fruit of it is that you'll have two different people look at you, and if you have heart, more than likely two people will like you. But if you show just what we considered favoritism and just being this person, you'll probably just get one person like you. But it's only because they're like that. But everybody loves a person that comes from the heart. And it's one of the things that I was fortunate, because of humility. I was fortunate to be able to eat the fruit of what is vulnerable, right? Being a person of vulnerability. It doesn't hide behind things. It's probably one of the most free feeling things in your life, not to hide behind something, because there's nothing to hide behind. And a lot of the leaders don't see the value. A lot of the leaders won't ever experience what the value is. But you're right. People love leaders that come from the heart, and are more interested in the person than themselves. And don't get me wrong, we all try to take care of ourselves as much as we can, but it's not at the expense of someone else. Like, I'd rather go down burning before I hurt someone else.
Right.
And that's just that's just the way it is. And humility has so much worth in leadership. It is one of the reasons why we're in business, right? People don't understand it, but we'll help you understand it, and we'll help you see the goodness there from it. But the first proof of it all is your people. Your people will tell you as soon as they see it how appreciated it is.
And I'm going to jump on the next one, which was support your people, right? We can't do it without people, first and foremost. Right. We fight in a team. We don't fight alone when it comes to war and what we're going through today. It takes a team effort. And talk about support your people and set the example, tied in here. A great example. You see different CEOs of different companies and organizations right now that decided to have no paycheck, because guess what? They're supporting their people. They're setting the example. They're being humble. And this is creating loyalty, trust, and so many other things. So it's so incredible how support your people, which to me it's derived from the philosophy of a servant leadership, right? Because if you look at traditional leadership, you focus on thriving for the company and the organizational goals. But you got to change and reframe that. The main goal is to support your people first. And once you get that, you will get to the results of the company because you need them to get there anyway. So let's train. If you have that mindset of reaching the goal first, rethink that. Rethink your strategy. How to really focus on dealing with growing the seeds into those beautiful trees in this example of gardening, you know, but growing your people, mentoring them, and seeing they take care of the fruits of the labor of the results. Because guess what? In a room of 10, there's 9 other people and 9 other smart people and diverse. And if you include them, you're doing great. And surround yourself with smarter people. That's the way things go, right? So support your people. And that's just one example of a CEO getting a pay cut 100%. But servant leadership to me drives the philosophy of serving people.
Yeah, no, and you see those stories come up. You know, we don't get sponsored by no one, so this one is just one of those out there. Aldi's, you know, it's a European entity, decided they're open and carte blanche. They're going to give 10% increase across the board, all the way backdated, all the way to the beginning of this whole thing on the 9th of March. You know, so these are examples where, and we've been talking about it, right? Listening, setting the example, being humble, and now that we're talking about supporting your people, these are the times, and I've said this before, these are the times where your leadership will speak louder than ever.
Right.
But you get it wrong, and people will remember forever. They'll be talking to their grandchildren about you. And so this is the time to get right. I was on a show not too long ago. I said this is the perfect time as a leader to get the help you need to make sure that you can make it on the other side of this coin a true leader. So if you know that there's some areas, some voids in your leadership, this is the time to get it right, because the fact remains, you must support your people. Your product is great. You know what? Your idea was wonderful, but without people, it goes nowhere. Without a person to buy your product, you're nowhere. Right. Without a person to sell your product, you're nowhere. Without a person to market your product, you're nowhere. I mean, and just even with the staff, I was chuckling at how things turn out. It used to be that the janitorial staff would be treated as a third-class citizen in a company, and now they're the most important because they're sanitizing all your spaces. This is how easy and how fast things can turn around. So be humble, understand that you're in a position of leadership for a reason, and it's not just for you, right? It's for you to lead people on a better path, a clearer path. But if you misuse that position nowadays, and what we're going through right now, it might not be there tomorrow. So if you have some of those areas, right, that we've been talking about, you've been suffering from listening, you're at level 1, right? Never make it to 2 or 3. You need to get some help. If you have not been setting the example, get some help, and this is what we do. This is what me and Vince do. And we could do it, pretty easily. You just need to be humble, right? I always have said that the first sign of you growing is for you to admit that you need to grow. And so that humility goes a long way. It not only helps you, it helps your people. but it's all because we need to support our folks. We need to support those that are actually doing the work, getting the jobs done, making, you talk about revenue, right? The people make your revenue. If you think it's just people, just buying, what about the in between? So start supporting as much as you can. Now, I applaud all those CEOs that have decided to invest again into their people. They will remember it for a very long time.
Right. And and I think I love your example about the janitorial service folks. So one thing I'll say about that is if you look across the board, every job is important. Every job adds value to the big circle, right, of the organization. So no matter what level, what your specific job is, they all are important. And by your example, what was going on today is it showcases how important janitorial services are. How important are the folks that take the fruit and that we put it out our table right now? So every job is important, folks. So people matter, support them, be humble, and listen to them, right? What drives us to the last point is trust. Trust. Wow, that bubble, you could put $10 into the account, but you have one withdrawal and you depleted your whole account, right? And it takes time. It's something that takes time to build. And I'll ask you all to think about this question that I wrote, as an example. So for trust, if you have a team member, an employee, or other leader gives you feedback, what do you tend to do? What thoughts emerges in you? What about your feelings? You got to think about that, because are you really in the area of having personal awareness? Because if you are, this is one thing you should go back and say to them right after they give you feedback is thank them for trusting me through enough to tell me about this. Thank them first for the trust, for trusting me enough to tell me about this, right? You got to first thank them, because it's hard to receive and or give feedback. So you building trust by letting them, allowing them to have you having that open door and being honest with yourself, and not really already in your head, oh, I can't believe X, Y, Z. What am I feeling? So trust starts from within, building that personal awareness. As you mentioned, if you need any of these skill sets or qualities, sometimes you need to search for help, but you might also think about it that something you might fear. It might be fear that's keeping you from doing certain things. So personal awareness is so key in all of these 5 elements that we talked about. And to build trust, first you have to trust yourself and be trustworthy of everything that comes towards you before you radiate it out. So we all know the definition academically what trust is, but how do you exercise it when you are getting kind of like, if you feel you're being given feedback, are you feel like you're pinned against the wall? Or are you really feeling embraced of having this opportunity in front of you? So it all starts with self. Not the right way to answer this last one, but I thought the examples add value to this. What are your thoughts, Enrique?
Yeah, no, trust has to be looked at from the leadership standpoint as something that's not uh, deserved, right? It is something that is given. It comes from someone else to you. It's not something that you demand. It is not something that you can lay claims to. It is only something that you facilitate to come to you. The way you facilitate it coming to you is by creating an environment that allows that to come to you. And people place their trust in you. And a lot of people that are in leadership think that it's something that they deserve or are owed. You know,
Respect.
so just remember that trust comes from outside in, and you have to develop something and be, that listener, be that example, be that supporter, be that humble leader that facilitates trust coming to you. And like Vince just said, thank them. It is not easy to trust people. It is not. Uh, and so when someone feels like they can and they do, thank them. That's valuable. And if you cherish trust, I am certain that we would see less and less violations of trust. And that's just it, right? So as a leader, um, you have to create that environment. And yeah, so as Vince had said earlier, and I have said earlier, this is the time. Try to get these things right now that you're at the shelter of your home, where you can listen to podcasts like these and get some hints or tips. And if you are struggling with these areas, if you recognize that these are areas that are causing voids in your leadership, reach out to us. How can they reach out to us, Vince?
Oh, well, that's great, Enrique. They can reach out to us by either liking us and subscribing to definitely our podcast, and email. Emails are great. So reach out to us through theleadershipvoid@gmail.com. You definitely can reach out to us there. Send us messages on LinkedIn, our personal pages. We can definitely reach back out to you. I think our goal is try to reach back out within 48 hours, at least 2 days. Give us a couple, because we also dealing with our own personal, but we want to make sure we address your issues. Again, theleadershipvoid@gmail.com. And I would say, this is not about the lack of your leadership skills. This is the lack of your personal awareness. The personal awareness piece falls into all these interpersonal skill sets we're talking about. And if it's fear, let us know. Confidentiality is important in this arena as well. We will definitely attribute that to this growing process of growing self. So your skills are there. You made it there on your own based on your skill sets. Now, help you with your personal awareness.
That's right. So we mentioned the podcast and joining us. We're doing these every Wednesday morning, or at least releasing them every Wednesday morning. So stay tuned. The leadership theleadershipvoid@gmail.com is where you can find us. And we've been thinking about sponsors, right? So what can you tell us about that, Vince?
Yeah, you mentioned it early on about not sponsoring Aldi's, but the reality is that we would like to honor your company, honor your efforts by you being a sponsor on our show. And what that would entail is for you just to reach out, let us know if you have some memorabilia you would like us to showcase, a coffee mug, a T-shirt. We'll love to honor you and talk about how the value you bring into to this whole circle of the world of life. So sponsorships are welcome. Please reach out. Send us an email. Send us a request on LinkedIn. We would love to have your company highlighted on one of our shows. Speaking about highlighted on one of our shows, we have some exciting news for next week. So next week, drum roll, Enrique, what's going on next week?
All right. Next week, we have a special guest with us. And Lori Huertas from the Barry University, right? Barry University. She will be with us. And this is a twist to what we've been doing here. And just to give you a heads up, right, we have the survey. We'll be speaking about those survey results throughout our time with you. But we want to interject and bring in guest speakers, guest hosts, co-hosts with us, And next week, we will be having Lori with us. We're blessed to have had the communication with her to get her on. And she'll be focusing about education and leadership and the importance between those two things. And so stay tuned. It's going to be a very good show. And we just want to highlight some of our veterans or people who are supporting veterans in our community through our show. And this is one way that we can.
Amen on that. Yeah. So Lori Huerta, she is the Extended Learning Regional Recruiter for Barry University, located in Melbourne campus in Brevard. And she's going to talk about her journey and also about the Transformational Leadership Development Program they have. What a great way to talk about the educational level of grooming our future leaders too. So very excited to hear what she has to bring and offer. Tune in Wednesday, April 15th to talk about and hear about the Transformational Leadership Development Program that Lori Huertas is going to bring to us. So we're so excited. We're so grateful. We hope you tune in, and hopefully you enjoyed today's session. We gave you a little synopsis of the advice someone would give into the leadership position for the first time. And we will address a question too on week 3 of April. But stay tuned for our guest, our wonderful guest, Lori, on our next podcast.
Outstanding. And so, as in all things, we thank you for being with us today, listening to the show. We really appreciate it. Don't be shy. If you have questions or issues dealing with leadership, please email us. You can also comment on our YouTube channel. And we'll read those. And if you have any suggestions for future shows or you would like to be on our show, please reach out as well. We thank you for the time that you've given and invested in us, and we hope our content has helped you and will help you develop. Until next week.
See ya.